Hello, coming to you from the spiritual land of board gaming, Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, Guru Bryce Journey. Tied in with the popular recurring Out of the Dust geek list on Board Game Geek, the Out of the Dust podcast is a weekly podcast that is focused on re-exploring games we play that we hadn't previously played in a year or more. Why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remembered it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? Those are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. This week on the podcast, episode 29. On the Out of the Dust segment, I'll bring Joraku out of the dust. The contributor will dust off both Beyond Baker Street and Pocket Imperium. On the reaction segment, I'll give my thoughts on Rio Grande's crazy upcoming expansion pricing. On the What I've Been Playing segment, I review Forum Trajanum. On the Obscure Bryce Game segment, I review The Master's Trials, Wrath of Magmaroth. And we wrap up the episode by reviewing my top 10 disappointments of 2018. I had a chance to bring a fascinating little card game, Joraku, out of the dust recently. This is a very unique trick-taking area control game set in a feudal Japan theme from publisher Tasty Minstrel Games and designer Iori Tsukinami. I last played it 1 year, 0 months, and 18 days ago when my friend Brent introduced it to me before our opposite teams clashed over Trivia Mafia one night. I was impressed enough with it to add it to my wish list. Several months later, it connected with me in a math trade. I got it off the shelf of opportunity when my wife and I brought it to play with our friends Rob and Emily. It worked out well, and we had an intense game of trying to outguess what we were all going to play from one trick to the next. I have a fondness for trick-taking games, and the unusual combination with area control makes this one stand out from the crowd. Unfortunately, the minimum player requirements that trick-taking games demand means it won't hit the table as often as other games, but it goes in the field of excellent trick-taking games ready to be called upon when the opportunity arises. Let's see what a contributor brought out of the dust. Brendan Riley, username Wombat929, brought a couple of fun games out of the dust recently. First up was Beyond Baker Street, which he last played 1 year, 1 month, and 3 days ago. This is a pretty popular Z-Man deduction game. He writes, Beyond Baker Street feels a bit like someone said, what if we take the cool card-holding mechanism from Hanabi and made a better game out of it? And they did. We like the variable challenges and the overall feel of BBS, and we're happy to play it again. The overall feel of the game is great, and the theme gives just enough direction to make it feel like you're doing something rather than just matching numbers. That said, the color design on the game makes it hard to tell the cards apart sometimes. A decent game, and recommended if you don't have Hanabi already. Brendan also brought the much more obscure Pocket Imperium out of the dust. This is a fast-paced 4X sci-fi game from Ludi Creations. Brendan last played it 3 years, 5 months, and 12 days ago. He writes, a delightful take on the 4X experience in 30 to 45 minutes. This game really fits the Pocket premise, coming in a box even smaller than the Tiny Epic series, and packing an interesting strategic punch. The overall gameplay involves choosing what order to do the 3 actions, explore, exterminate, expand, and trying to do them in a different order than your opponents do. While it has a hint of rock, paper, scissors in that choice, it's a nice bluff. And then you have to make the most out of the new ships, and with your expansion exploration actions. I'm going to try to break this out more often. It's a nice little game. Thanks for the contribution, Brendan. I've never played either one of these before, so it's fun to hear about a couple of games I'm actually not familiar with. Reaction segment time. Rio Grande Games recently announced the slate of titles they are expecting to publish this year. There's a lot of good-looking stuff on that list, including both new titles and expansions for older titles. Among the latter is a new expansion for Roll for the Galaxy, titled Rivalry. But what has some people raising their eyebrows and making vocal exclamations of dismay is the $80 MSRP price tag attached to this expansion. That's a full $20 more than the base game itself. despite accusations of purposefully inflating the price just because the expansion is for a popular game. There's a legitimate reason for the high price tag. There's a ton of content in this box, including a horde of customizable dice and dice faces, which is not a cheap component to make. In fact, Rio Grande stated that there's enough content in this box to fill 3 normal-sized $40 expansions. As Rio Grande has pointed out, with that in mind, the $80 price tag is actually a bargain. Well, that may be, but it does make you wonder that since Rivalry is a modular expansion anyway, why didn't Rio Grande release this as 3 separate expansions? It might have been a wiser marketing move. Not only would they have avoided the controversy over Rivalry's MSRP, but they would likely have made more money that way too. Then again, Rio Grande has never been known for their smart marketing strategies. In fact, as much as I like their games, I often make fun of them for their seemingly lack of any marketing at all. The bottom line for me, though, is that the high price tag, as good a deal and as warranted as it might actually be, is indeed cost prohibitive. It's an interesting experiment on the part of Rio Grande, but I don't think it's going to work out positively for them because I can imagine the price tag is going to be prohibitive for others as well. I can envision a scenario where Rio Grande overprints this expansion due to the popularity of the base game. It moves off the shelves slowly because of the price, and we see it in online sales lists later in the year. If that's the case, it might wind up under my 2019 Christmas tree due to the result of a Black Friday sale. We'll see. This week on the What I've Been Playing segment, I'm going to tell you about Stefan Feld's new game, Forum Trajanum. The rulebook amused me because there's historical information in the back of it about the various parts of the game that were inspired by Emperor Trajan's Rome, presumably to enhance the thematic connection of the players to the game. As if Stefan Feld fans care about theme. How cute. Anyway, here's how it works. Players are Roman governors building up the colonia they are in charge of. Their success in this endeavor is measured, of course, by accumulating the most victory points, for which there are 6 different methods of gaining them. The Emperor Trajan loves victory points. A player's colonia is represented by a 6x6 grid on a personal player board, the rows and columns of which are marked by Roman-themed icons and the spaces of which are covered up by colonia tiles. At the beginning of each round, 2 street cards are turned over with these icons pictured, and players will take 1 colonia tile from each corresponding row or column. Players will keep 1 tile and pass the other, and then choose from their own and the one they were passed which one to use on their turn. Most of these tiles grant a player a certain quantity and type of resources, but some will unlock special abilities for the player. Resources are then used to purchase buildings for the now empty spaces in their colonia. Gray and colored buildings will each score points in different ways in the scoring phase, which occurs at the end of every 4 rounds. Gray buildings will also advance markers on various tracks, and colored buildings will enable a player to place an envoy, which are used colonia tiles of the player's color, in the titular Forum Trajanum, where they will score more points during the scoring phase in a couple of different ways. A final scoring opportunity arises through the use of Trajan cards, which are building and set collection objectives a player can pursue during the course of the game. I, for one, never get tired of Stefan Feld point salad deliciousness, and there's a lot of appetizing options in Forum Trajanum. There are lots of fun, agonizing choices for players to make, from choosing which colonia tile they keep or pass, and which to use, and what type of building to build with. All of this is done in a very limited amount of time, of course, so don't expect to be able to accomplish everything you want to. But this is the hallmark of a good Euro to me. It should end quicker than you want and leave you wanting to do more, instead of lasting too long and wishing the game would just end already. So I'm a fan, and I'm looking forward to playing this game regularly throughout the year. No immediate dusty prospects for Forum Trajanum. Obscure Bryce Game segment time. This week I'm going to tell you about a game that has flown under the radar since its release last year. The Master's Trials, Wrath of Magmaroth. This was an AEG game from designers Vangelis Magiartakis and Anastasios Gregoriadis, best known as the designer and developer of Among the Stars and Dice City. In fact, The Master's Trials is built on the Dice City dice placement engine, but rethemed as a supernatural kung fu game and turned into a cooperative game. I'm a fan of Dice City, so The Master's Trials has been on my radar since its release, and it was one of the many games my cats got me for Christmas as a result of Black Friday sales last year. Here's how it works. Players start with a player board with rows for each of their 5 dice and columns for each numerical face of those dice. Each of these dice face spaces grant a player basic resources of some kind. Each turn, players roll their dice and collect the resources corresponding to the dice faces that turned up. Then they use those resources to purchase dice face space upgrades that provide more resources, greater attack strength, or some other ability. Attack strength is used to attack minions and, eventually, the boss, Magmaroth himself. If players manage to deplete Magmaroth's health to 0 before time expires, they win. But if their boards fill up with damage tokens or time runs out first, they lose. While Dice City is a pleasant engine-building and resource-gathering game, The Master's Trials turns out to be quite the challenging and stressful co-op. It's really tough, and my wife and I haven't come close to winning in any of our plays yet. I appreciate how different the system feels applied to a completely different theme and style of game, but there is one core problem. Because the system is all about customizing and building up the results of one's dice, it's kind of frustrating when those abilities are so easily damaged and thwarted by the bad guys in the game. It's like the game goes out of its way to nullify the most fun part of it. Now, this may just be the result of beginners getting destroyed by the game before we have a chance to figure out its nuances, and I do intend on trying it more in the future, including the solo mode, but I am a little worried for its long-term dusty prospects. For the last couple of episodes, I've explored some of the positive aspects of 2018 with my top 10 new to me and my top 10 of the year, but now it's time to go negative. And this week I'm going to look at my top 10 most disappointing games of the year. Some of these are games that came out in 2018, and others are older ones that were just new to me. Number 10, Vindication. There were several role-playing adventure games set in generic fantasy universes that came out this year, presumably hoping to duplicate the success of Gloomhaven. I found this one the most generic and forgettable of the bunch. I'm not rushing out to play City of Kings either, but City of Kings was better than this one. Number 9, Pacific Rim, Shuffling the Deck. I wasn't expecting much from this game, but I was expecting at least a little more than what it wound up offering. The theme and IP might have been better served in any genre rather than the deduction one that it wound up in. Number 8, Zendo. Speaking of deduction games, I had the chance to play this modern classic pretty recently. Unfortunately, this is a case of hating a game more than being disappointed with it. I don't generally like deduction games on the best of days, but this one was unintuitive, frustrating, and sorely in need of a player aid. Number 7, the Fast Forward games. As with a lot of Friedemann Fries's games lately, the Fast Forward series works better as a concept than in actual implementation. Some of the entries were a little better than others, but when an Uno variant is the highlight of the series, you know it's not much of a series to begin with. Number 6, Black Orchestra. This was the first of a couple of memorable Kickstarter disappointments that I suffered this year. Yes, the theme is awesome, but the mechanics are not! I backed this because of the theme and because of the seemingly universal love and praise for the game. But that love and praise turned out to be unwarranted for me. The gameplay is too scripted, the mechanics uninspired, and the fact that the game comes down to a single die roll is anticlimactic. Number 5, My First Stone Age. Kids deserve better than this tedious memory-based garbage, and that's all I need to say about that one. Number 4, Expansity. In a convention season that saw a lot of exciting and innovative releases, this one fell flat for me. There's nothing original in this repetitious city-building game. Number 3, Rise of Tribes. I don't understand the love for this game at all. First, this is not